12, be astonished, O ye heavens. That could mean more than just the stars. It could mean the angels there as well. Be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid. Be very desolate, saith the Lord, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Now, does everyone know what a cistern is? A cistern is like a dry well. And it receives water like rainwater that's channeled to run off in the cistern. And it, in the Middle East, where Israel is, it's a semi-arid region. Water is a highly valuable commodity, and you want to take steps to create something of a reservoir for water. That's what the cistern was. It was like a reservoir to hold water, because it would come in torrents in the rainy season. Then you'd have a dry season where months on end you wouldn't get any rain. But God says, you've done two things wrong. I'm the fountain of living waters. I'm the source. You have forsaken me, and now you've dug a reservoir, a cistern, to hold what little water you can collect, but even those cisterns have holes in them. The Lord is just emphasizing how ridiculous this was. But I trust you sense the heartache of God. God loves his people. He wants to bless them. And yet, if we turn away from him, we tie his hands, and he cannot bless. The idols which the pagans make cannot see, they cannot hear, they cannot speak or do anything. I like what Psalm 115 has to say on this, verses 4 to 7, where it says, talking about these false gods, their idols. By the way, if I recall correctly, the word idol in Hebrew means a nothing. So he's really saying they're nothings. Quite an accurate description. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. Psalm 115, now verse 5. They have mouths, these idols, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they. By the way, God's just mocking the heathen here. You can tell it. This is a lot of sarcastic irony, whatever you want to say. They have it coming, of course. Noses have they, but they smell not. I'll have you know that God said in the prophet Amos, he said, I will not smell at your feast. That's a whole other subject. But our worship can go up before God as a sweet-smelling savor. He smells it. And it causes his heart to rejoice. They have hands, verse 7, but they handle not. Feet they have, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. So what God is saying, did you get that verse? Okay, raise your hand if I lose you. That's Psalm 115, verses 4 to 7. Psalm 115, verses 4 to 7. I get in a hurry and I may run ahead. Slow me down. I don't mean to lose you. But basically what the Bible is saying is that these so-called gods or idols are absolutely helpless. Even the evil spirits behind those idols cannot exhibit the perfect attributes, those incommunicable attributes of authentic deity. Now, this is adding a little bit more of a dimension to it, but the Bible goes a little bit further than just saying those physical idols are nothing. That's true. those physical idols can't hear, see, move, talk, or whatever. But there are evil spirits behind the worship of pagan deities. There is power. Those gods manifested power. Limited, of course. They certainly were not almighty like our God. But it was enough to convince the people in that day that there must be something to it. And in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 7, God gave to Moses a rule. Yes?
Is that story true in the Apocrypha that, about the origin of idols? You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure at this point. I'm not a great student of the Apocrypha.
There's the story that the start of the whole idol thing was that a man had a son that he cherished very much, and the son died. And so he created a statue in the son's image. And it started to become like overly revered. And like then people started to think maybe that things should be offered to the statue of his son. And
Well, I think that's a pretend story. Man has always been a creature of worship. Sometimes he just worships himself. But notice what they call movie stars sometimes idols.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they're onto something there. But I'm not familiar with that particular story. But that wouldn't account for gods in all the different cultures. That originated, I believe, to fill the vacuum. Remember this, when you leave the true God out, there's something in the heart of man that wants to worship. And he will design something that satisfies at least his mind at that time, his desire to fulfill that. Now, as I said, there are evil spirits, supernatural beings. I believe they can be identified as the devil's angels. Remember in Matthew 25, it talks about the devil and his angels. Those would have been fallen angels, of course, those that rebelled with Satan when he chose to leave any allegiance to the true God whatsoever, and he set himself up as an object to be worshipped. And here in Leviticus chapter 17, we have a very interesting situation where God is talking to these Israelites who have just rather recently been delivered from bondage in Egypt. These are a bunch of ex-slaves. And while they were in Egypt, they picked up on all the pagan ideologies and concepts that the Egyptians had evolved in thinking about what God and gods are like. And so God had a problem. You know, God has problems. It's largely because he wants to use people. God, are you sure about this? Let me tell you about people. And so when he got Israel out from Egypt, that was perhaps the easiest thing God could do, is to get Israel out of Egypt. It took 40 years to get Egypt out of Israel. And so there were some very strict commandments against any form of idolatry. It carried the death penalty. In fact, it went further than that because God knows how subtle the devil can be. And he may try to get people to worship him privately, even without maybe some statue around, but worshiping these spirits. And Israelites would offer, their sacrifices to these spirits out in the wilderness, in the congregation, 2.5 to 3 million strong going through the wilderness. And so the Lord says, all right, if you want a lamb chop for supper, I'm paraphrasing this, okay? It's okay. But you can't kill that lamb there in your own tent, in your own place where you're staying. You have to bring it to the priest at the tabernacle. That's what we've got back there. And offer it as a peace offering. And now a peace offering was not meant to establish peace or to make peace. A peace offering was to celebrate peace that had already been made clear. One would have to offer a sin offering or a trespass offering before they could offer a peace offering. But if you wanted supper, you wanted a meat, an animal to eat for supper, that was okay. But you can't do it out there on your own. You've got to bring it to the door of the tabernacle and kill that, slay it as a sacrifice unto God. Then that animal is not going to be used then secretly. It's the sacrificing of it is not going to be used secretly as an act of worship to some devil. And this is what it says here in Leviticus 17 verse 7. Well, let me just read a little bit of it here, a little bit above that. Okay. And the priest shall, verse 6, let's go to verse 7. And they shall, talking about the people of Israel, shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute unto them forever, throughout all their generations. And so it goes on to say that whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or the strangers, that's even some people that are not Israelites, but traveling with the community, they're going to be held to the same requirements. Or strangers which sojourn among you, and offereth a burnt offering or sacrifice, and bringeth it not to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation to offer unto the Lord, even that man shall be cut off from among his people. As I said, that sounds like the death penalty to me. Cut off from his people. And so the Lord wanted to stop any worship, anything that even looked like worship, even though they just, well, I want a lamb chop tonight, so I'm going to kill me a lamb. Well, there was a certain regulation that they had to follow in order to prove that their heart was right with God. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 20, even in the New Testament, the fact that worshiping idols had a direct link to worshiping devils, demons, is not lost. That's not just an Old Testament concept. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 20. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you would have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You can't go and join in with some religious activity, even though your friends, your relatives may be there. You can't go and do that. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than He? He's saying, okay, better watch out now. You don't want to play games like this with God. And so, what God told the people of Israel in the Old Testament, had application to a similar culture where people were actively worshiping false gods, that still Christians could not align themselves with that kind of an activity. So it was a very stringent requirement that Christians are not to be involved in anything linked to the worship of idols. Now, it's one thing to be called to God. It's an entirely different matter to be God. That's what I'm emphasizing here in this chapter. A lot of things can be called God, but that doesn't make them God. Only one God has the necessary attributes that qualify him to be God. Now, sometimes in the Bible, various individuals have been called gods because of their God-like function. This, however, did not make any of them God by nature. Let me point this out. The word is somewhat flexible on this, and it may seem strange, but one of those individuals was Moses. Let's go to Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. Whoever gets there first can read it. But Exodus chapter 7. Okay. And the Lord said unto Moses, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh. And Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. I have made thee a god. God made Moses to be a god. Now, that's not used in any sense that Moses was then to be worshipped as God. He is speaking here concerning the godlike function that Moses is going to appear to Pharaoh. Moses walks in and says, you know, you're going to have a plague of boils, or a plague of flies, of gnats, a plague of, darkness, etc., or rain with fire. Now that sounds weird.
He said, thus saith the Lord, let my people go.
Yes, but Moses would walk in. Pharaoh couldn't see the true God. He saw Moses. Moses said, this is what's going to happen. And it always happened like Moses said it. Yeah. It began to appear to Pharaoh, who is this guy? And God says, I'm making you a god to Pharaoh. Not that Pharaoh was never to worship Moses, no. But that Moses was to fulfill a certain God-like function there before that king. Now, even the elders of Israel, Psalm 82, verse 6, the judges and the elders in Israel were also called gods.
In fact, in Jesus' life, he said, I've done many good things. For which of these do you stone me? He said, for these, we are not stoning you for any of these, but that thou, being a man, blasphemous, you make yourself God. He says, is it not written, ye are gods?
You have jumped to the next chapter.
I'll go ahead.
We will get there, but patience. Okay. Yes, Jesus quoted this verse. That's what our brother was saying. That Jesus knew the Bible and he was quoting this. All right, here in Psalm 82 and actually verse 6, God says, and I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Verse 7 says, but ye shall die like men. You think you're somebody. But if you don't acknowledge me and listen to me and judge properly, he's talking to the elders and the judges of Israel, who God expected to rule justly. Remember David's statement at the end of, what is it, at the end of 2 Samuel, isn't it? Where it says, he that ruleth men must be just. Must be just, must be fair, must be righteous. At the very first verse of Psalm 82, it says, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty, and he judges among the gods. Now, here, it's a small g, and the elders of Israel certainly do not share any of the incommunicable attributes of God, but they serve in a godlike function in making decisions concerning the future of God's people. And this is why God comes against them, because they have become unjust judges. Verse 2, how long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Think about that. In other words, you listen to the wrong kind of people as your advisors. God says, defend the poor and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and the needy and rid them out of the hand of the wicked. And so God was saying, okay, you share a position quite similar to mine in the midst of my people, but you don't really deserve this position. You are functioning out of character. And verse 7, ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. You're going to die. And you will then see you're not really God. But again, I'm showing you how the Bible itself uses the term God a little bit more flexibly, a little bit in broader definition than maybe you were aware of. I'm trying to be as thorough on this as I can. Then in the New Testament, in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, we have a very interesting statement that
What was that verse again?
2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. We can start at verse 3. But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them that believe not. This phrase, God of this world, is not referring to the true God. It's again a reference to Satan. Just like when Jesus said, the prince of this world cometh. The word prince there means the ruler. The prince of this world cometh and findeth nothing in me. Satan's going to try to get rid of Jesus and does actually engineer his execution. But he could never get Jesus to deny his commitment to his Father. And so here it says that if people do not understand the message, the true, genuine message of the gospel, it's because they have believed the lie of the devil. Much like Eve did in the garden.